Salutations, new friend. Excuse us, but would you be interested in a story? I don't mean to interrupt.
One that changed the fate of tabletop role-playing games, perhaps?
Great. Why don't you start us off, Scrat?
Well, it began with a promise. One to rule all the editions of Dungeons and Dragons. Fun, refined, pure treasure. But something went wrong. The OGL was being changed. This cut the rulers of TTRPGs from their throne.
But all that was left for us that opened the OGL was bitter disappointment of what could have been. You have to understand, we all scattered, really certain that the future of TTRPGs really held no treasure at all.
But they and we were wrong. The catastrophe of the OGL unearthed new opportunities across the space. The chance attracted many, including, wait, what were they called again?
How do you forget every time? They were called the Global Press Corporation. They announced their presence with a black flag to, you say, snatch this opportunity from those famed wizards.
Though those same wizards uncovered a chance to hold a summit to civilize the situation before it got too out of hand.
But don't misunderstand us.
I can't forget. Corporations weren't the most interesting ones searching for these opportunities. The call for new ideas is not so easily resisted.
The brave ones really did show up in droves.
To uncover the secrets not yet found. Some called them creators, others called them fools.
But I call them friends. Our story begins with them.
And of course, us. But most importantly, you. So welcome to the Lunar Rest.
Alright, Scrat. Next time, maybe tone down the creepiness factor a bit. You don't want to scare off new customers.
Might be right. Perhaps I'll try a new approach next time to entice their minds.
I think it's recording. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Lunar Rest channel. I hope you enjoyed that intro. It took too long to make, especially since I don't really know how to animate things at all. But either way, I hope you enjoyed it. We are here to create a TTRPG system in 1 year's time, and if we do not create this TTRPG system in 1 year's time, we'll have to delete the entire YouTube channel. It's a pretty fun challenge and should add a little bit intrigue to, and speed, I guess, to the process of this, but this is how it's going to work. We're not going to do a Kickstarter or anything like that. We're just going to develop it here on YouTube and release of packets of information, and then eventually we'll figure out how we're going to release the full game. But essentially what the game is going to be called is Mythical Worlds. It's a really fun TTRPG system, and we're going to get into why we're creating it now. So, there's a lot of TTRPG systems being created as we speak. There's ones by Cobalt Press, there's ones being developed by Critical Role even, who are famous, of course, but we're not. This is the first YouTube channel we're creating, a video we're creating on YouTube. So why are we creating the system, you might ask? Well, the reason is because none of those game systems have yet to come out, so I'm not sure if they're going to solve this issue, but none of these game systems that we have today really solve the problem I'm trying to solve. Essentially, I've been playing D&D 5th edition for a couple of years now, and I've played other game systems too, but in all of those game systems, they've had a single similar problem, and that is they're hard to get into, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I started off actually as a DM first, and then got to be a player later on, but when I was trying to learn all the rules of D&D 5th edition, it felt daunting. So we're creating this TTRPG system for people like me when I was starting out, and also so I can actually play with my friends and family without making them try to learn so many rules or tell them, hey, just ignore all of it, we're just gonna play and just play for fun and ignore most of the rules that are supposed to happen. So yeah, that's why we're creating it. But also for me currently, where I feel like I have gotten such a grasp of D&D 5th edition that I created all my homebrew for it, and all this homebrew really bogged down the original game system design. And many of you might have had this similar experience with creating homebrew. Some things just don't really fit in well with that system. So we're trying to create the system to solve that problem as well. So I guess I keep saying so, but with further ado, let's get into how this is going to work for you and me. Basically, and every week, every Saturday, we're going to release another video and upload it. I don't know if it's going to be morning or night, but either way, it's going to be released on Saturday. And in that video, we're going to discuss either a feature preview packet or a playtest packet. And for those who've playtested other games before, you might already know what a playtest packet is, but let me get into the details. A feature packet, or feature preview packet, I should say, is a not dumbed down, I guess simplified version of a playtest packet. There's not enough content to really, I guess, do a playtest packet in that kind of sense. It doesn't have all the content to playtest the game, but it has a lot of the features, and there we'll be able to discuss just from reading if it will work or not. And then when we get into enough features and enough feature previews, we'll be able to develop a feature a playtest packet that we'll release probably like 1 to 2 months from now. It will be our first, and that way you'll actually be able to play the game. You'll have enough content. You'll have a few monsters, a class, and all that kind of stuff to play with, a few spells to mess around with, and we'll develop from there. And that's kind of how it'll work between us. But today we're going to talk about today's feature preview packet, which is preview packet 1. Game modes, game genres, and I guess it's called skill paths. So let's get into it. So, how do we solve this problem that I brought up earlier? Game modes is how we're going to solve this problem. If you're familiar with game difficulty modes in video game RPGs, you may already know what I'm talking about. But if you're not, let's break it down. Essentially, game difficulty modes are difficulties that you, the player, can pick when you want to play the game on easy mode if it's your first time, or normal mode if you've played this game before, or similar games, but you don't want a hard difficulty to like fighting or discovery or stuff like that, or if you want to play one of the harder game modes. And this usually allows you to keep coming back to the game and playing it again on a different difficulty when you feel comfortable, and play to your heart's desire on the difficulty you want to do. So the problem with TTRPGs is that there's no difficulty setting for the complexity of the game, and that's where our game system will differ. First of all, there's 3 game system types. There is going to be Mythical Worlds Swift, Mythical Worlds Mighty, and Mythical Worlds Majestic. And the short name for these are Swift Worlds, Mighty Worlds, and Majestic Worlds. Essentially, these are 3 different complexity modes for you to choose from for you as a DM and your players. And as you grow and understand the rules more, you will easily be able to transition to the more complex version. Each of the rules in the version you're playing in should scale evenly up to the new one. Let's go through an example of combat for instance. For Swift Worlds, the least complex of the game modes, you will be able to essentially roll a d20 to see if you hit the target. This is your typical system that's found in D&D and also Pathfinder, but the difference here is that instead of rolling dice for damage, you'll do an average of what that die would be plus your modifier in that sense. And this will be all simplified on a new type of character sheet as we get into other feature previews. But here's an example of the transition, how that works. So Mythical Worlds Mighty, you'll be able to then go up to a different level of complexity. Now Mythical Worlds Mighty is more similar to D&D 5th edition in level of complexity, maybe a tad bit more in some areas and a tad bit less in others. But in this game difficulty or complexity mode, in combat specifically, you'll be able to roll a d20 to see if you hit, but also roll the damage die instead of just taking that average that's on the character sheet. In addition to this, you'll be able to move 1/6 of your movement speed, or speed rating in this game system, if an attack misses you. So it adds more dynamic movement to the board, but also it adds that little bit of complexity on top of what you were already doing that isn't too complex. So when you move from Swift Worlds to Mighty Worlds, it is a really simple transition. Lastly, Majestic Worlds has the addition of basically if you just meet the target's defense rating or armor class in D&D 5th edition, you graze the target, dealing just that set damage. So you don't deal your full amount of damage that you would if you hit the target, but you also don't deal nothing because you just graze the target. And this is an example of combat. Next, we'll be talking about game genres, I should say. So, after the release of the full game system of Mythical Worlds, we'll also release expansion sets detailed for different settings. So the first, expansion set really just comes with the release of the game, which is going to be called Fates of Axion. It's a high fantasy world setting where you'll be able to do swords and magic and all of that kind of stuff, and it will include skill paths for, we'll get into that, what that means, basically new subclasses, new monsters, cultures to look at, roll tables and tips for DMs, as well as also the modularity for Mythical Worlds Majestic or Majestic Worlds. There will be rule changes. Think of this as like official homebrew. Rules that you don't have to really think of how to change to better fit the game system to a high fantasy setting. It already is pretty much tailored to it, but in future expansions, when we do a horror expansion or stuff like that, there will be changes to the rule changes you can add to your game if you want to go past the game system normally goes, that really are set out to fit that game setting. And that's kind of it for game genres. I think that would be kind of cool to have instead of different types of releases. Every expansion would be pretty big, but it'll include settings, monsters, all that kind of stuff. Next, lastly, we'll talk about our version of subclasses. So instead of subclasses, we'll have skill paths. And what that means is basically from level 1, you choose your class, but then you also will receive basically a list of levels, I guess, and what you will get at each level. So we'll get into more detail how that works, but think of it just simply as you get upgrades or new features or abilities at every level, and all of it's right there. The class and the subclass in other games usually have two different lists that you have to follow. In this one, they're combined. The only time you'll have to leave your skill path to pick something off of a different list is when you're picking new spells to add or weapon properties. These are two separate lists, and the only reason why they're separate is just because there's so many choices. We can't just fit all of them under every level you get, basically. But it's really trying to get you not to leave the skill path tree, I guess, that often. You get choices at some levels to choose between features too, really customizing your character. And these skill paths even make modifications to the class features to better fit the theme of that subclass, quote unquote. Yeah, so that's basically it for this week. Join us next week to go over the next feature preview, and in that feature preview we'll be going over the different classes and the major classes as well, and some skill paths for examples. And if you have any feedback or want to read the feature preview, it is in the description for you to download as a PDF. I hope you love reading it. Leave feedback, please, and join us on Twitch every Friday to get a glimpse of what we're working on, and maybe you get to have some input before the video goes live and that feature preview goes live. It's pretty fun, and I hope to see you there. Have a good lunar rest, and I hope you enjoy your week.